Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into a seriously fascinating paper titled The Filtered Bible, Recovering the Supernatural Worldview. We are going to explore how modern preaching systematically and often unintentionally screens out the Bible's original supernatural context. It's a massive topic, and recovering this ancient lens can completely, absolutely transform how we understand the text. So let's get right into it.
Right off the bat, think about this. Why does the modern pulpit seem to just ignore the Bible's weirdest passages? I mean, you can spend literally decades in faithful church attendance. You do the Wednesday night studies, you underline your texts, you support the mission, and yet you will rarely, if ever, hear a sermon on the bizarre supernatural events in Scripture. Why on earth is that?
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our medical diagnosis roadmap for uncovering this massive interpretive disease. We'll start with the peculiar pulpit silence, move into the anatomy of the filter, and check out the symptoms of the disease. Then, we'll look at the Divine Council corrective, and finally, wrap up with the recovered cosmic gospel.
Section 1. The peculiar pulpit silence, ignoring the supernatural.
When we actually take a magnifying glass to the text, we find these massive, glaring pieces of theology that are simply missing from modern preaching. Passages like the divine judgment in Psalm 82, Deuteronomy 32 dividing the nations, or that totally bizarre Sons of God episode in Genesis 6. Then you have the imprisoned spirits of 1 Peter 3, or the strange ritual logic of the two goats in Leviticus 16. These passages aren't hiding, they sit right in plain sight. In fact, some of them are structurally crucial to the whole biblical narrative, yet they are routinely passed over, allegorized into absolute harmlessness, or just quietly treated as embarrassments to be managed.
Moving to Section 2. Anatomy of the filter, the invisible lens.
Our source material points out that this silence isn't a failure of a preacher's nerve or competence. It's more like an invisible theological filter inherited by tradition. Just consider this quote, "One does not see the lens through which one is looking. One sees only what the lens permits." It's so true, right? Readers are handed a theological system, maybe it's reformed, dispensational, whatever it might be, and they are taught to read through it. This filter predetermines what a text means before exegesis even starts. Passages that fit the system get amplified. The ones that resist it just get muted. You don't experience this as bias. You experience it as simple faithfulness, which is exactly why the filter is so incredibly hard to detect.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sharp, painful distinction between Bible reading and true Bible study. Bible reading is devotional, often heavily filtered through inherited systematic tradition. But Bible study? That means actually submitting to the text's ancient Near Eastern context and its original languages. It means letting the Bible be exactly what it is, not what our modern traditions want it to be. The uncomfortable reality here is that a whole lot of what we call Bible study is really just systematic theology hunting for confirmation. So if you take away one thing, make it this. Strangeness in Scripture is a signal, it is not a defect. When a passage looks totally weird to our modern eyes, we shouldn't domesticate it. It means it contains ancient content that our default modern filter was quite literally built to exclude. If it's weird, it's important. It's there for a reason. All right, Section 3. Symptoms of the disease, the downstream effects.
When you strip that supernatural worldview out, you flatten almost everything downstream. Look at how this shifts. The gospel goes from a grand cosmic reclamation of the world down to just a private individual transaction. Sin collapses from a profound structural condition of humanity living in hostile territory into mere behavioral moralism, basically just a list of bad habits. Spiritual conflict, the ancient authors meant literal adversaries, but the filtered view psychologizes that into a metaphor for internal, personal struggle. And our destiny shrinks from governing a renewed earth alongside God into just escaping to a disembodied, private afterlife. The filter fundamentally distorts the core message.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Divine Council corrective, the ancient cure. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. This ancient framework actually constructs an epic cosmic drama of rebellious divine administrators, which is what the biblical authors actually believed. We start in primeval history with the Genesis 6 transgression, rebellious spiritual beings crossing boundaries. Then, in the post-flood era, we hit the Babel disinheritance. This sets the entire stage for the first century, where the cross and resurrection act as a decisive invasion. And it all points to the future, a global Eden consummation. This isn't just weird background trivia. This is the real narrative spine of the biblical canon. Let's zoom in on that second point for a second, the Babel disinheritance. The source text emphasizes this as an absolutely crucial turning point. At Babel, God essentially disinherited the nations, allotting them to lesser divine beings, the sons of God. But those beings rebelled. They demanded idolatry and became usurping powers. This explains why the world is contested space. God retained Israel as his own portion, but the other nations fell under hostile, rebel administration.
Now for Section 5, the recovered cosmic gospel. Reframing the narrative.
Recovering this ancient worldview completely redefines the gospel. It becomes a royal announcement that the world's occupation is ended and a new king reigns. It is not a private negotiation with a divine accountant. The cross was literally a cosmic invasion of enemy-occupied territory, breaking the illegitimate claims of dominion that had held humanity in bondage ever since Babel.
And naturally, that profoundly changes how we view salvation. It's defined here as believing loyalty and the transfer of allegiance from those defeated powers over to the risen Lord. It's about shifting your deepest loyalty to the true King. You're stepping out from under the jurisdiction of rebel powers rather than just reciting a formula to guarantee a ticket to heaven. Even baptism recovers its incredible cosmic weight in this framework. It ceases to be just a sentimental ceremony or a nice symbol of personal cleansing. It becomes a public loyalty oath. It is a visceral act of spiritual warfare, declaring exactly which side you've joined, effectively a declaration of doom to those defeated spiritual adversaries.
So I want to pose a Socratic question to you, just to chew on. Forgiven into what? The filtered, purely individualistic view says salvation is merely about avoiding punishment. But if this cosmic drama is real, what are you actually saved for?
The answer is absolutely startling. The redeemed are reinstated as God's governing family to exercise dominion over a renewed earth. Think about that. Humanity is meant to take up the cosmic administration that those corrupt rebel powers forfeited at Babel. You aren't just pardoned, you are reinstated into a governing vocation alongside the king.
Now, I know this sounds incredibly radical compared to what we're used to, but listen to this quote from the paper. The task before the church is not to invent something new, but to recover what was always there, waiting beneath the systems that obscured it. Our source assures us this framework doesn't discard orthodoxy. It doesn't throw out salvation by grace or the authority of Scripture. Actually, scratch that, it strengthens them by anchoring them in their original, vastly more confrontational context. It's really just about letting the Bible speak in the unfamiliar accents of its own ancient world.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Are you submitting to Scripture, or are you submitting to tradition wearing Scripture's clothing? I really hope this explainer has challenged you to let the Bible finally be exactly what it is and sparked a desire to look past that invisible filter and study the text completely anew. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the ancient worldview, and keep seeking the unfiltered truth.